Hello, welcome. This is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. As many of you know, about several months ago, I filed my green papers to run for United States Senate against the current Democrat, Ed Markey. However, in the last month, I've decided that I will run as a Republican. One of the reasons motivating my desire to run as a Republican is I believe that Donald Trump, President Trump, has done an extraordinary job to bring back the essence of the Republican Party. In Massachusetts, as many of you know, last year or 2 years ago, we ran as independents, and we ran an extraordinary campaign. It was because of the Shiva for Senate campaign we completely destroyed Elizabeth Warren's chance of ever running for president. In fact, as you can see, she's polling extremely low behind many other frontrunners. Elizabeth Warren was proven to be a fake Indian, and I say that not in some jest, as it was a great slogan, by the way, only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian, but more importantly, what we brought out was the aspect of the academic elites, like Elizabeth Warren, thinking that she knows better, that in fact she's above the law. As you may recall, I was the one who sent Elizabeth Warren on her birthday a DNA test kit. We held a DNA dance party, and then we sent her another test kit on Valentine's Day. Eventually, our volunteers, a massive ground force of extraordinary people, put up close to 1,000 signs across Massachusetts with a picture of me and with her in her headdress, essentially not just mocking her, but essentially bringing out the fact that this individual tried to claim that she was a Native American. These signs were everywhere. Elizabeth Warren and her campaign were not able to get away from those signs. As a response to that, she finally took the DNA test. And obviously, as a part of taking that DNA test, she convinced somebody to actually throw in some Peruvian genes and some Mexican genes. And even at that point, her genotype was 1 out of 1024, proving our point that she was a faker Indian than what we thought. But today, given the extraordinary work of President Trump, we believe that it's an opportune time to run as a Republican, particularly because of the extraordinary support we got from the true, real Republicans, the Trump Republicans in Massachusetts. Many of them desired that we run as Republicans. However, as you know, at that time, in 2018, there was a fake deal, a fake Republican who was put in place to try to distract from us by the Rhino establishment. However, again, because of the extraordinary work of President Trump, it has created a historic opening for someone like me to run again as a real Republican. So I'm here to tell you tonight that I will be running as a Republican for Shiva for Senate. One of the most important things in this election will be truth. As many of you know, the Democrats are putting forward what I call the fake Green Deal, or they call it the GND, the Green New Deal. They have someone who has been essentially manufactured by the elite in this country. I call her 11 because of the 11 syllables in her name. I'm not going to use the AOC any further from now on, as you'll see, because this is a manufactured Manchurian candidate. That is what number 11 is. However, Markey, if you look in the Green New Deal posters, he is standing next to number 11 here. And why is he doing that? Because he is the co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. If you happen to experiment and sign up for Markey's or Malarkey's email, you will notice every email coming is about that the world is going to be destroyed and we need to sign up for the Green New Deal. What I want to tell you is Ed Markey has no degrees in science. I have 4 degrees, as many of you know, in engineering, including my PhD in biological engineering. But what's extraordinary is a bunch of politicians on the quote-unquote left, or Democrats, are out there essentially scaring the everyday American working people. And this is essentially the tactic. But the way they do it is through a very sophisticated way of using not only fake news, which President Trump has made essentially a common household term, but they use something even more powerful than fake news. I call it the fake news behind the fake news, and that's fake science. And the epicenter of fake science, I would argue, is the 1-mile radius between MIT and Harvard. As someone who's been an insider and a whistleblower for most of my life, be it an environmental activist or an activist for free speech or an activist for innovation, I've been essentially at the front lines of not only doing a new science. As many of you know, I'm a scientist who's published in the major journals in the world. My new company, Cytosolve, is working on cures from diseases from cancer to Alzheimer's, but I'm also an activist. And now in the last 2 years, I've entered politics to extend my love of this country, my love of science and activism into a much more broader platform. But one of the important things that we all need to understand that's occurred is that the fake news behind the fake news is actually fake science. Up until the 70s, you could argue that there was, in some ways, significant science done in this country. However, after the 70s, there's been a complete consolidation of the academic elites. I want to separate academia, or the word academic, from the word scientist. Most of the people in high levels of university today are academics, salespeople. They essentially work for mega corporations, and in fact, they've got into the art of writing whatever is necessary to move quote unquote science in a particular direction. And a lot of our campaign is going to talk about what has occurred in this country by cutting off freedom, by stopping dialogue, by stopping conversation. And when you do that, one of the important things that happens is we recognize that freedom is necessary for science, but when we stop conversation, when we stop debate, when we stop discourse, we cannot really have science. In fact, crazy Schumer, Senator Schumer, has put forward a bill, Bill 792, which says that it will be illegal for any government agency or government group to sponsor any kind of debate, any kind of discourse on climate change, because there's scientific consensus. Let me tell you, as someone who actually does science, scientific consensus is not science. There's only one thing from which science comes from, and that's called the scientific method. There could be 99 people out of 100 who say that the sun revolves around the earth, but one person could show scientifically that the earth revolves around the sun. The scientific method is not about, frankly, democracy. The scientific method is about a very difficult and hard enterprise of coming up with a hypothesis, doing the experiments, getting the results, and if the results don't match your hypothesis, your guess, you go back to the drawing board. As Richard Feynman said, it doesn't matter how good you look, who you are, what your name is, what family you come from. If your results do not match with your guess, your science is wrong. In the area of climate change, there are close to 40 different guesses, 40 different models on how much Arctic ice will be melting. Some say 0, others say 100, and there's a flavor for everyone in between. This is in science. In science, we call this indeterminate. Let me tell you how ludicrous this is. This would be Isaac Newton saying that when the apple falls from the earth, it'll hit the ground, and someone else saying when the apple falls from the tree, or when the apple falls from the tree, it'll hit the ground at a certain velocity at a certain time. Someone else saying when the apple falls, it'll suddenly be suspended 2 feet from the tree, and someone else saying 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet. We call this bogus science. It would be nonsense. However, the academic elites, because of the enormous amount of funding, close to $2 billion in climate impact grants, are involved now in probably one of the most biggest frauds in scientific history. And I say that not as any person who's against climate change. Any scientist will agree climate changes. Any scientist will agree CO2 is a greenhouse gas. Any scientist will agree greenhouse gases increase temperature. The issue is how much. And the evidence is nowhere near showing that CO2 is going to increase the level of temperature that is being claimed. There is frankly no science on this. So there's no dispute on the first 3 points. However, when we go back to fundamental science, if you approach it with the scientific method, it's basically indeterminate. However, what's happened is because of the agenda of certain people, they have used that indeterminacy to say that we must have the principle or the precautionary principle. This is what insurance companies do. So based on the precautionary principle, based on indeterminacy, they're telling all of us to get insurance. That is what the Green New Deal is. It's a multi-trillion-dollar insurance policy. And guess who's going to pay for it? It's going to be the American working person through carbon taxes, which will make the academic elites very wealthy because they'll be able to get more grants, and particularly their puppet masters, including Al Gore, and very, very large mega corporations. Now, the issue with climate change is not about climate change. Climate change, in some ways, is the coming to age of the most sophisticated collusion between media, industry, and academia. I have a new book coming out called The Climate of Science. Not only do I discuss climate change, but I discuss 16 other issues, from immigrations to guns to cannabis. And I take each of these issues from a scientific approach, showing that we need to move beyond left or right. And what we'll find is in each one of these cases that large megacorporations who are consolidated now into a few set of individuals can manipulate the academic elites at places like MIT and Harvard to get done what they want to do. And this is completely antithetical to what America is about. This country was built on freedom, freedom of discourse, freedom of speech, the scientific method. The founders of this country, from Jefferson to Franklin, etc., were sons of the Enlightenment, the scientific Enlightenment. They believed in the scientific method. But when we have, I hate to say this, someone who's as moronic as Schumer, as unqualified as Ed Markey, who's been, by the way, in the government for nearly 40 years, since 1876. I'm sorry, since 1976, since the bicentennial. These people have no regard for science. Their goal is to either conflate risk to create alarm or to diminish risk. So on the one hand, they'll say the earth is going to end in 12 years. On the other hand, they will not say anything against companies like Monsanto, who many in the Democratic and the establishment Republicans promoted. But I believe that it's time for a scientist, a worker, an inventor, and that's who I am. I came here as an immigrant, as many of you know, in 1970. I invented the first email system. Not only that, then I went on to MIT, got 4 degrees, started 7 companies, and I've invented many other things, contributing not only innovations and great products, but also jobs to this country. And it's about time that you, the American people, had someone that will fight for you. I do not need to be doing this. My financial records have been filed with the United States Senate, many of the committees, who, as a part of the process. I don't need to be doing this. I could be on a beach, I could be relaxing, I could be doing my companies. I'm doing this because I have great love for this country, and I am tired of people being shorted by people like Ed Markey, people like Warren, people like Obama, and it's time for you to have a real choice. So I want to let you know that I'm running for United States Senate. Please go to Shiva for Senate. You can donate whatever you want, but more importantly, get ready to volunteer, because it's time that we win and we take our country back, and we bring the country back to people that actually will represent you. Smart people, hardworking people, innovators and creators like me and you. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai for Shiva for Senate. Thank you.